Afternoon. It's strange text titles. I don't know what else to name it, but main things today we will look at Proverbs chapter 5. Proverbs chapter 5. As we can, if you have the Bible, hey, God's word's in your hands. You always can use it and open it and align with what I will talk about today or preach today. So, Proverbs chapter 5 is a continuation that I like to make on. So I know and I realize is that not all of you were here, all of you were here, constantly listens to the Proverbs 1 to 4 and now 5. So I need to do some kind of review a little bit of that. So living as sexual beings, a warning against adulteries and just much more on the topics because this is God's words. Is that as I prepare this, I continue to submit to God's words too, and I hope we continue in our lifestyle, continue to submit to God's words and pursue the understanding that He is giving to us as well. So the reviews is that we have Proverbs chapter 1 to chapter 4. One of the review I want to do this is kind of help yourself to remember. I kind of phrase it out verses is that quite familiar for Christians' life, all right? So when I was little, as kids, high school, and keep reminding me the verses that encourage me and continue shaping me into nowadays. So Proverbs chapter 1, you famous verses, you probably memorize it or keep in your hearts. But if you have not, hey, these opportunities for you to remember and engrave God's words into your hearts, right? The first one is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fool despise wisdom and instructions. It's a very imperative for us to know these foundations for the Proverbs. It's not us, it's not that we want to pick and choose in the book of Proverbs or wise sayings of God, but we want to go back again that, hey, this is the first chapter. King Solomon put this as the foundations. That is the first pillars of the foundations that I would call that in the book of Proverbs. Don't ever forget that. All right, don't ever forget that. The second one is even more here. Chapter 2 is for wisdom will enter your heart and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Right? This is a very strong statement. It's very inviting statement when we search for wisdom. Not any kind of wisdom, but the wisdoms that from God Himself to do that. Well, this is Old Testament time. This is not New Testament times. Okay, Old Testament. And later as we continue doing, I'm going to try to tie the New Testament like I did before. So, and move into the third chapter. It's like, this is even more intriguing as we get into the Proverbs because, hey, people of God, right? If you call yourself people of God, you must trust the Lord. Otherwise, you don't really trust God. You just say in your mouth. You don't really trust God. But that's why King Solomon really wants his people to understand that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Not just partially. Not just 90%. He wants us to trust God with all your heart. And we always do this. Right, we just cut this verse and they say, "Oh, I trust God. I really trust God." And they just cut the lean on your understanding. They just cut that part, lean not on your own understanding. Sometimes we say we trust God, but I'm still using my efforts and sometimes twisted knowledge to. In the term of trust God. But here in particular chapter 3, it continues, trust in the Lord with all your heart, not lean onto your own understanding. And this is the hardest part on verse 6. In all your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. This is not a guilt trip of verses, but sometimes in my life too, when I say I trust God, yeah, I lean on that understanding, yeah, but when to submit all to Him, in a practical sense, when we plan ahead of time, did we actually talk to God and pray, God, is this what you want me to do? When you want to go college, you got so fixation with the college particular you really want to go to. And you forgot to bring it in your prayer and submit to God, right? When we want to find the jobs out there, oh, it's so good, it's the coverage, the salary, everything. Did we ever bring it to the Lord saying, hey, God, is this what you want me to be? Right? It is so hard. We just skip that part, submit to Him, and bring that everything in our prayers. Again, I'm not saying this is a guilt trip. I'm just putting in a practical sense. But I want to remind you, these are 3 pillars, right, in the book of Proverbs. This is fear the Lord, really seeks God's wisdom, and then trust Him and submit to Him. It's a 3 pillar foundations of the Proverbs. And finally, it's very simple. Hey, the beginning of wisdom, get wisdom. And reiterate this in different ways. Get that wisdom, no matter what it costs. It reminds me of Jesus who's talking about a guy in parables, like he found a field, and the field has a treasure, and he sold everything he had just to buy that field. There's the concept that I have in mind in this. Hey, get wisdom, no matter what it costs. Right? Those are the things. I know these 4 verses is kind of, if it's new for you, it might not be. It might be hard for you to remember, but I want to encourage you to memorize it. Right? So I kind of developed tricks to remember the chapters. It's like Kroger. You shop at Kroger. Kroger's is all that capitals letter is actually acronym for actions. Say know, receive, give, and listen to wisdom. Instead of Kroger, I changed to Krogel and with an L because I really can't fit them. But helps me, hey, if I want to fear the Lord, I really need to go to shop at Kroger to really understand the fear of the Lord. It just helped me. I hope that helps you. The second one, Atlas, the map of wisdom. You probably heard of that wisdom. How do we find wisdom? How do we do the Atlas? Accept, treasure, listen, apply, and search. If you go back and then in your own time, you want to read the Proverbs chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, in your own Bible, could I highlight, hey, this is what I'm talking about in NIV versions. It might be different versions, different words they use in the different versions. So Atlas, right? And then the third one, draft, right? Wisdom draft, because she's drafting us, recruiting us to trust in the Lord. Well, what is that? Discipline. The discipline of the Lord is very, very powerful in our lives, because sometimes we are so disobedient, and when God disciplines us in our lives, you put us into the straight path. I don't know if you can relate or not, right? I can relate a number of times in my own life. And then discipline, respect, acknowledge, and fear, and trust God. Draft. So I create this kind of, again, I create on my own, and it's helped me to remember when I just kind of space out, doing nothing, cannot read the books, I just kind of flash this back in my own mind and remember God's words. You could do a number of tricks in your own times too. And finally, I don't get any more acronym, because it's so simple. The fourth one, get wisdom, whatever the cost is. Right? Get wisdom, whatever it is. With these 4 foundations as a reminder and review for these chapters, let's go into chapter 5. Right? Because I cannot just pick chapter 5 independently and then speak about it, because you're going to have a different background to interpret the text. And we don't want that. Right? We try to get these 4 things first, and then let's move on. Chapter 5. Let's look at chapter 5. So as you can see on the PowerPoint, it stated, my son, pay attention to my wisdom, listen well to my words of sight, that you may maintain discretion and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of an adulteress drips honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths are crooked, but she knows it not. Here, the first point of the chapter 5 is that, you know what? Sexual temptations is real. Right? With that 4 foundations, as I let pillars, that we want to come back and say, here, you know, King Solomon said the temptation is real. You know, in any era, even in nowadays with the technology, it's super scarier in the present times because it was so real that you can get it out of a click. You know, I'll get into it in a finger click or tap, right? So it is real. Right? Here, let's look at the meaning of discretion is what it is. When I was doing the study here, reading, and what does really discretion mean? So I got this from Oxford University from software. It says, hey, discretion is pretty much a freedom to decide on a course of actions or recognize the distinctions in the verbs tense. This is right. Recognize this. We're going to get into it because it's important here. And in verse 1, it stated that the Son is maintained discretion, that is to recognize the distinctions between the sweet talk of an adulteress and the real and the genuine speech from an honest woman. Right? That's what this discretions mean. Need to be able to distinguish between one and the other. Right? And interesting enough, King Solomon did not mention specific sweet talks on coming out of an adulteress, right? However, it described how it would be very pleasant to hear. And as a result of it, most young men would follow and fulfill her demands. It doesn't tell us what they are, but it tells us the result of that. And as we can see, just kind of spill the beans a bit, her demands were driven to sexual demands. It would be evident later as we get into verse 8 and 11. Right? So we get into is this uncomfortable topics that we talk about in these stages, but it's a real thing. It needs to be taught by King Solomon, and it's to us. And we continue to be reminded. So when I was doing this, I found another commentary by Dr. Garrett, his Old Testament professor. He interpreted it because of different translations. He says that the adulteress in verse 3 literally means the other woman. See, NIV somehow interpreted differently, but we see it will translate differently, not interpret differently. Just translate a little bit different to get the result clear for us. But Dr. Garrett says that, no, these other women's, the literal translations, that it says that is someone other than the man's wife. Apparently, this is attributes to the family, husband and wife. I know most of us are not married. But hey, we get into it later, right? So the verse does not deny that the other woman is indeed tempting. But the temptation is not all sexual. He says that the honey lips and smooth mouths of the other woman refers more to her flattery than her sexual abilities. The man is drawn to her because of she inflates his ego with hollow praise in ways his own wife will not. So how do I reconcile this? When we deal with this issue, because I was talking earlier, says to fulfill her demand in the context is like they were driven towards sexuals. And how do I bring this into this? Right? From Dr. Garrett's commentary, the flattery might not contain sexual meanings, right? Might not contain, like say more like words that contains sexual meanings, but it could be just empty praises. You see, could be just empty praises that to start with, That's why discretion is so important for the young man to listen to and to analyze himself and say, hey, is this really true? Instead of, hey, just go with the flow, oh, she's sweet talking and so and forth. But here, it could be empty praises, but again, it builds up to the point to win the man's heart. The one that already taken away married. And when we look at the verse 4 to 5, show the result of fulfilling the adulteress's demands. And again, this is King Solomon wrote this. And he observed according to his books, Proverbs, that as it will reveal here and there, right? So the victim will feel bitterness in life after fulfilling the demand, and as we can see clearly in verses 5, that demand result in leading to the death, right? That leading to the death. This is just my own thoughts outside the text, kind of reading, marginal readings. It's not an important thing. Right? I was thinking to myself, why would that be happening to the death, right? So as I continue reading, and then what comes up to my mind, or what would things that come to your mind? 10 Commandments, right? What would the young man violate commandments here if he fulfilled the demand? It would be 7th commandment, right? You shall not commit adultery. So what would the consequence be if the person violated the 10 commandments? Stoned to death. You see how this is just my own reasoning. I'll help you to read my own mind. As you continue. And not just that, but I believe the parents probably will instruct the sons too, not to do this and that. But here, just throwing another one, probably dishonoring the parents as well. And also the violations of the 5th commandment, right? So, that's just what comes about. Again, that is just a marginal reading. It's not in the text, just my own interpretation, on thought. But let's jump into verse 6. Verse 6 sounds a little bit difficult, a little bit disconnects from verse 3 to 5. And it's hard to understand and reconcile the text. She gives no thoughts to the way of life. Her paths are crooked, but she knows it not. And when you look at the verse 3 and verse 4, and how in the world she would not know it? She's the one that's leading. Right? And it's as if they're contradicted. So when I was just trying to struggle with this and that, and like again, commentaries from Dr. Garrett has helped me too, because he's much knowledgeable than me in the Hebrews ancients. So he suggested a different explanation, different translations. So this is why I give it to you here. He translates different ways, even though he used NIV text. He said, most likely, is based on his understanding. He said, in order that you, the young man, not pay attention to path of life, her way, the adulteress, her ways wander from it, but you will not know it. I was talking to Pastor Raleigh today. He said, in order to get a PhD in the Old Testament, this is my time, you have to know 7 languages. So, oh no, it's too many languages. Ancient languages is 4, and modern languages 2, at least 3 of them. So there's too much work. All right, so when I look at this, he was, Dr. Garrett is one of my professors, Golden Cowells. He wrote these commentaries, and I was, he's more knowledgeable, and this, and I was looking at him, hey, when I think about it, it makes sense. Because she's the hunter, not the victims in the text. In verse 6, it seems like she did not know what she was doing, right? Or she's as if she was the victims of the social, societal pressures like that. Not. And the interpretations of what Dr. Garrett is bringing up, this or translations of the text come up with more clear in my understanding of that. In order that you pay attention, not pay attention to the path of life, which is the victims. Her ways wanders from it, because the adulteress already turned from the straight path to the crooked path. She knows it, right? But guess what? The young man did not know it. That's why she's leading him away from the path. And that's leading him to the death area. Right? It's amazing when I think about it. It's a little bit clear. So with this mind, and let's go back to the verse 2, because maintaining discretions and preserving knowledge are crucial to avoid and running from sexual temptations. Discretions is very important, right? To distinguish this. Now, the best part is this. The term of the adulteress is a feminine figure. Is that right? It's a feminine figure. The reality is that an adulteress could be a masculine figure. You see what I'm saying? It could be a masculine figure. Therefore, ladies, you're going to have to be very careful too when the guy sweet talks to you. Right? You're going to be aware too. Right? Because the structures of the language itself in the Old Testament is very masculine driven. Everything, my son, he, right? Him. But because of the way structures of the language itself is driven very masculine, in our time, right, it's a general statement for them. It can be a feminine too. So when it comes to the temptations that is real, it's not just for the sons. You got it? It's not just for women. For men. But it's also for daughters, for ladies, for women as well. And that is the fact. Sexual temptation is real. As long as we are the sexual beings. You got it? So that's the first point that you want. It takes so much time to think about, ponder about it. But I got to move on. I got a short time to share with this with you. So we're going to have to move on to verse 7 and 14. These verses focus on the consequence of sexual sins. King Solomon has observed this quite a number, and he integrated this to teach people, his people to love God, to fear God, to whatever it is that we can continue see what the text revealed to us, right? So here, in verse 7 to 11, right? Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your best strength to others and your ears to one who is cruel, lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toils enrich another man's house. At the end of your life, you will groan when your flesh and body are spent. In verse 7 and to 11 here, he's dealing with this prostitution and brothels were part of the social structures when the Proverbs were written. You see that? Not until 20th centuries did most of the state in the United States ban prostitution and brothel. Right? It is very true. Yes, not. Even in your literature study, in English classes, they always have an argument within these concepts of prostitutions and brothels and stuff like that. If you get into literature study, the writers is right. But here, I want to remind you this: when we're looking at this, again, this institutions is part of the social structures. And King Solomon knew this. I mean, he was there at the time. I understand that. And he needs to warn this, spell it out, yell it out to young men not to go there. Not to spend your money or income or other things to this kind of institutions. Even though they might make a lot of money, who knows. But anyway, so the concept was there, the institutions were there, and King Solomon understood that. That's the bottom line. And let's go back a little bit to what Dr. Garrett suggested. If we take the interpretations of adulteress as the other woman, not the adulteress, the other woman, and that it also has the same interpretations. What I'm saying is that even though if there were no institutions that we were talking about here, right? But the temptation is still there. The other woman here could be behaving and acting as what King Solomon is talking about. And he says that, you know what? Don't go there. Don't go surround there, near her house. Right? It's dangerous. It's not just dangerous, it's very dangerous. You might not be able to control yourself. Right? It is a very strong built-in urges that young men, young women created. Part of the creations need to be protected in the senses that we created in flesh as well. Right? And King Solomon knows this. They understand it. Right? I'll bring another illustrations later, but let's drive here. The reason here I elaborate in verse 9 to 11, here it says that first the best strength is given to others who would not appreciate it or take advantage of it. Second, your wealth is spent to support the strong words, the addictions, and that. And in these cases, sexual addictions, third, addictions will lose all strength and belonging, and in the end, cost the person's life. Right? And it's not just there. He continued in verse 12 to 14, because that's the result. But in the process, there are things changes. One of the things changing your attitude. The attitude would be you ignore disciplined life. Right? Here leads to the disconnections to the people surrounding you. Everybody's looking at me and say, what am I talking about? This is strange. But this is the things that the cause of sexual sins. And he did not just say the result, but he also kind of step by step spell it out. Now let's have a little bit quiz over here. You heard of this? You probably have seen, or somewhere in the school or somewhere, a counseling class. You see this is right. Symptoms of addictions. I was browsing this there from a Mind Journal. Right, look at these topics, and let's compare with God's words. Right. You can see over here lack of self-control. Did he say it's over here? Right? Hated disciplines is there. You see that symptoms is starting out there. And then change in personalities is there. It's for us as God's people to be aware of this too. If somebody's in trouble, we're going to have to help them. Right? And experience financial legal issues. Right? Because it's not wisely, it's just giving spend based on impulses or on addictions, right? Social withdrawal, right? You see this have to come brings to utter ruin in the midst of the whole assembly. This is verse 4. And then less of interest in things previous enjoy. Yeah. And if you're much older than myself, we probably experience or exposed to these kind of things. Or other people is facing this. And this is real. The consequences are real. And if it's not real, why do they post this symptom of addictions, warning a lot of things about the pornographies, a lot of stuff is out there. Right? Yeah. If we faithfully go back to God's words, right? We've been told, don't go there, right? Don't walk into that path. You're wasting your life, you're wasting your talents, right? Your personality will change. Instead of like more God's-like, you'll be probably more worldly-like, right? And here, but the good thing is that the text did not stop there. This is the best parts that I want to share with you in the following verse 15 to 23. Right? So, drink waters from your own cisterns, running waters from your own wells. Should your springs overflows in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares. This is analogies there. And we get into that too. Let them be yours alone, never be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be captivated by her love. Right? And here we talk about the sexual temptation is real, and the deadly sinful, deadly of sexual sins. But the best part is that he gives the solutions. You know, we always sometimes we ignore this. You know, we created flesh. God created us sexual beings. He had the best intentions on his creations. You see that? He has the best intentions for us. And in order to get the best out of it, we need to guard it. We need to protect it until the time is right. Right? Until the time is mature. Right? So, one of the things here, King Solomon is give warnings to protect the people. Give a lot of warnings. Again and again, when we look at the Proverbs, he always pop up again here and there about these issues. And then tells the people, hey, stop, make a U-turn. You're on the wrong path. You have to go back to what God intentions, God prepared for you. Right? And the next one is that the purpose of this is to preserve our lives. Don't destroy it, but to preserve it, to reap the rewards that God intended to hear. Right? So what do we get from here in verse 15 to 19 is that how do we preserve it? You just be like, you know what? Marriage is only for a man and a woman. Not for the multiple, right? It's not. Once you stick with these regulations, you get the most out of it. And I know some of the youth in the back is giggling. Is that you're going to have to preserve. You might have 10, 15 years for you to, but this is the fact that God intended it. God intended the best for you. Right? And then the next one, the world is telling us differently, but here the concept, sexual intimacy is only between a husband and wife. What would he talk about the running waters, the cisterns? It's analogies, is that only given to a man and a woman, is that God blessed under God's house. Consummation is marriage. And that relationship is only applying this. If you walk out of that steps, you ruin it. Yes, there are a lot of marriage counselings try to restore this, but it's going to leave marks. This is the best things that you can get. You're going to have to protect it. You guard it, even though you might not understand in the future who your spouse is. Right? God really wants us to do that. Right? Affections of a husband is only for his wife and his vice versa. He's talking about intimate affections. Is that, when you talk about sweet talks and stuff like that, it's only between husband and wife. Right? Wait until you take the premarital counseling, right, Pastor Wally? See? Because this is gonna be cultivating the families that God's given to you for the spouse. And it's clearly stated over here. I told Pastor Riley that, you know what, this is going to be a premarital counseling lectures instead of preaching today or marriage counseling lectures. Yes, okay, fine, let's go with it. But the harvest is also a blessing. The blessing is in the form of children. Children, the blessings is for family. The world might not look at that, but for the couple who have kids, those are your blessings from the Lord. You got to have to guide it, guard it, lead them, right? And that is the best ever. Money cannot buy that. So, and for the closing statements, as we can see over there, right? It is, I'm not going to read verse 22 to 23, but look at the point. It is an encouragement, chapter 5, to avoid adultery and sexual sins. It is, because it's so dangerous. Once you cross the line, it changed the whole personalities, is that you could hardly, or people with themselves, turn away from it. That's the reality. It takes effort, financial, as a group of people, to bring them back, and even with the bringing back to the stage of the reconciliations, it's so much pain. One of the pastoral counseling is 99% is marriage counseling. I'm serious. I'm telling you this because you want to enjoy your marriage's life, your family life for the fullest. And Proverbs 5 is very clear about that. And when you're thinking of crossing that line, King Solomon said, you know what, God is watching you. It's scary, even though he's not there, he's watching you. Like the story I remember of Joseph. God is watching you. That thought would just stop you. Well, that's what here in that text. And sin again will entangle sinners. Like any other sins, there is no way out with your own help. There needs a group of people, faithful people, to walk you out. And if you got into that temptations or entangled in that, you better to talk to Pastor Seabox, Pastor Raleigh, Pastor Jones. I'm dealing with children only. Just kidding. So just a reminder again, this thing is very powerful. It's not something a guilt trip. What the world's telling you, use these chapters. Build your life that God intended for you to the max to enjoy. When you have your own kids, your own grandkids, you continue on past values. Right? So now, applications, married couple, please, if you have problems, go back to Proverbs chapter 5. It will never change. God will never change, not just on His grace and mercy. He will not change on His law as well. He will not change one. You could have two wives. He will not do that because intention of creations, Adam and Eve. Right? So go back and live that lifestyle. It might not be a 180-degree turn, but with God's help, slowly go back to God's value. Cultivate married couples, cultivate the family that God has given to you. You're married. Don't say, oh, she's not mine. She got changed and stuff like that. No, that is not true. That's the devil's thought in your mind. You got married, that's yours. Spouse, husband, wife. If it's your kids, that's yours. God gave it to you. Don't say, that's not my kids. Okay? Don't ever say that. Even they change that. You're going to have to cultivate, work with that. Reconciliations as Christ has reconciled us. That is the only way. That is the best way. How about single? How about single? I know this is not the text for me, but here, when I was in high school, a good friend of mine told me that struggling with the sexual temptations as well, he told me, you know what? Get your priorities straight. Yes, there are a lot of temptations, especially for the youth or college. A lot of hormones is going on in your brain, male and female, right? But here is a good verse, is that put your outdoor works in order. What is it? Prepare what you want to be in the future. Prepare a career, because with that mind, you're going to build your own house, your own family, that God already prepared for you, even though you did not know it. You see that? God already. The only thing is that we just have to faithfully living our lives, preparing when the right time, God will reveal it to us. Faithfully trusting Him, right? And cultivate your talent, your skills that you can use to build your family. Right? Let's pray for this. Father, wonderful words that you've given to us, and keep reminding us for your faithfulness and your goodness. Your goodness and your faithfulness never, ever leave us. The only thing is that sometimes our own standard of goodness and faithfulness changes. And we were the one that live and better than you. Forgive us, Lord. Draw us back to you. Even though sometimes we struggle and kicking, through the fellowships, through the community of your body, the church. That when we understand, when we submit, we receive the best of the best that you give us in this life. And in the holy name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.